Am I the asshole for leaving my wife after she embarrassed me in front of the entire family? I Mark, 30M. I'm trying to figure out if I'm the asshole for leaving my wife, Lisa, 28F, after she humiliated me in front of our entire family. We've been married for 5 years, have 2 kids, and a dog. To the outside world, we probably seemed like a typical couple, but beneath the surface, there was a lot brewing. Lisa is a stay-at-home mom, and while I've always appreciated the work that goes into raising our kids, the reality is that I've been doing most of the heavy lifting. I work long hours, anywhere between 10 and 14 hours a day, so that I can provide for our family. My job is demanding, and by the time I get home, I'm utterly exhausted. Despite that, I've been the one to get the kids ready for daycare, clean the house, and even cook when I can. Lisa, on the other hand, rarely pitches in. When she does, it's often accompanied by complaints about how I'm doing a horrible job, criticizing every little thing. The only reason I put up with it for so long was because I love her unconditionally. Just looking at her used to make my heart skip a beat. I always tried to remind myself that maybe it's the stress of motherhood or some other unseen pressure, but as time went on, the excuses began to wear thin. Then came the family reunion at my parents' house. My whole family was there, my parents, siblings, cousins, everyone. It was supposed to be a fun, relaxed event, a rare chance for me to unwind. But as we were all gathered in the living room, I overheard Lisa talking to a group of my cousins and siblings. She had no idea I was listening. With a condescending tone and a smug smile, she said, "Honestly, I don't do much around the house. Mark does everything. I don't even have to lift a finger. He works all day, comes home, cooks, cleans, he even gets the kids ready for daycare. He's practically my maid." The group chuckled awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable, but she kept going. "I don't know why he doesn't just hire help, but hey, if he wants to do everything, I'm not going to stop him." I felt my heart drop. I stood frozen in place, utterly humiliated. The people I loved and respected most had just been handed the impression that I was some spineless, worthless husband who couldn't get his wife to respect him. Worse, she seemed proud of it. I had sacrificed everything for Lisa. My time, my energy, my hobbies, and even my friendships, and this was how she viewed me. I abruptly left the reunion without saying a word to her. She must have noticed after a while because my phone started buzzing nonstop with her calls and texts. "Where did you go? Why did you leave?" she asked. I didn't answer. Finally, after what felt like hours of her pestering me, I picked up the phone and told her I needed space. "Clearly, you don't respect me, Lisa. I can't do this anymore." And as she always did, she tried to gaslight me. "Oh Mark, don't be so dramatic. It's not that serious. You know I didn't mean it like that." But I knew better. This wasn't the first time she had humiliated me. She had done it before, sometimes in front of friends, sometimes in front of our kids. I always brushed it off, telling myself that it wasn't worth the fight. But this time, something snapped in me. I could no longer excuse her behavior. The love I once felt for her had blinded me to the fact that I had become a shell of my former self. I had stopped hanging out with friends, abandoned hobbies I loved, and lost my sense of self. All to keep the peace in our marriage. I left home that night and checked into a motel. I didn't tell her where I was, and for a week, I lived in a strange limbo. I went to work, came back to the motel and slept. For the first time in years I felt a weight lift off my chest. I was alone, yes, but for once, I wasn't being nagged, criticized, or made to feel like I was never enough. The only thing I regretted was not reaching out to my kids. I knew they must have been worried sick, wondering where their dad was. But I needed that time to clear my head. Finally, after a week, I returned home. Lisa was waiting for me, looking like she had spent hours preparing for my arrival. The house was spotless, something I hadn't seen in years. She had cooked my favorite meal, the kids were bathed and happy, and the dog had even been walked. For a brief moment I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she had changed. Maybe she finally understood how much I had been hurting. But deep down I knew better. This was a temporary fix. Lisa always knew how to reel me back in, only for things to return to the way they were. She smiled at me and said, "See Mark, I can do it. We can be happy again." But I wasn't so easily convinced. "This isn't about one good week, Lisa. This is about years of disrespect. I don't know if I can keep doing this." We had a long talk that night, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was seeing things clearly. I loved her, yes, but love wasn't enough. I needed respect, partnership and support, things I hadn't felt in a long time. She cried, promised things would be different, but I had heard it all before. The breaking point came when I realized that this wasn't just about me. Our kids were growing up watching the dynamic between us, and I didn't want them to think this was what a healthy marriage looked like. I didn't want my daughter to think it was okay to treat her partner the way Lisa treated me, and I certainly didn't want my son to grow up thinking he had to sacrifice his happiness for the sake of keeping the peace. So, I made the hardest decision of my life. I filed for divorce. Lisa was furious. She tried to play the victim, telling everyone that I was abandoning my family. She took everything in the divorce, the house, the car, even a portion of my savings. But honestly, I didn't care. I was free. The months that followed were tough. We had to figure out a co-parenting arrangement, and while I tried to be civil for the sake of the kids, Lisa was still bitter. She would make snide remarks whenever we had to interact, and I could tell she was still angry that I had the audacity to leave her. But despite the challenges, I was happier than I had been in years. I reconnected with old friends, picked up my hobbies again, and most importantly, I rebuilt my relationship with my kids. We found a rhythm in our new lives, and while it wasn't perfect, it was better than the constant tension and unhappiness I had felt in my marriage. So Reddit, am I the asshole for leaving my wife after she embarrassed me in front of my entire family? I know divorce is a tough decision, especially when kids are involved, but I honestly believe it was the best thing for all of us.